Yo, 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 welcome to the Lenko show. We are back again. This is episode number 135. I'm your host, Alex Lenkowski, here with my bro, Chris. Chris, how you doing?
Hello, everybody. I'm well, thank you. How are you, Alex?
Superb. I'm very good, thank you. I've just had a very good phone call with a really nice chat with a lady called Kate.
Oh,
Outstanding. She was from London. She'd never heard of what a Cockney was, though. She had no idea.
interesting.
Whether she
Interesting.
was from London or not, she had a very good, like, slight Russian accent as well, which was interesting. I think I'm
I,
what.
I actually wonder, do you always entertain these calls? Because I always think back to how well you dealt with the lady who wanted to talk to you about your financial portfolio, and you invested quite a bit of time and energy into the into that call and into the one you just did. So,
Think about it. What else would we have been doing at the time? We were driving, we were in the car, we're just having a general chit chat. It was my way of just engaging and having a little bit of fun.
right.
And you can't deny you enjoyed it. It was somewhat enjoyable, wasn't it? It was a nice chat.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
polite, but this lady, Kate, just she's not up to the job. She offered to be my psychologist, by the way, guys. So I
I met
openly,
you in 12.
yeah, she thought I was 12. She accused me of having troubled childhoods, and so she must have known me. Someone's feeding her inside information. I reckon you're on it. Anyways, um, as usual, this episode is brought to you by, well, we are proudly sponsored by Dry Robe. And I was very, very grateful for my dry robe at training last night because, I mean, you just said, Chris, that the weather's getting warmer. It has been a little bit, but last night was freezing. And given my situation with my knee, I'm still limited in the amount that I'm doing. I'm trying to embrace the less is more mentality, being efficient with my work, which then means I'm spending a lot of time huddled up, trying to keep warm, staying like cuddling up in my dry robe and, being all soft. I mean, I am worried I'm getting a bit soft.
Why? 'Cause you're wearing a dry robe.
No, not because I'm wearing a dry robe, just mentally, am I getting a bit soft? I'm curious. I feel like I mean you're doing an Ironman. I feel like I need to something really difficult to do.
How are you doing, man?
That's just my gut feeling. No, I don't want to do an Ironman. The thing is, right? So I think like with playing American football and the training that I do for that, there's very little in the way of I'm going to go and ruin myself for this event or for this 100K run or for doing another ultra or I just it's a lot of work. You're doing that at the minute, which is today. That's why we're going to be talking about the interference effect and how the way you structure your training, the things you're doing can potentially interfere with your results and ruin your gains. So let's be honest, the vast majority of people, the vast majority of athletes who go to the gym, who train, who work out, I think unless they're following a specific plan, they're kind of they're doing okay, but could it be better? Yes. And then you've got some people make a complete and utter mess of it because I think obviously we get a bit greedy, don't we? We want everything all at once and we want it now. We don't want to wait for it. We just want to hammer on and be absolutely shredded, super strong, and fit as a fiddle. And it doesn't necessarily work like that, does it?
No, not unless you are taking Mexican supplements.
Mm. Even then, you could argue that the people taking the Mexican supplements or the assisties um, are probably not the healthiest, not the fittest in terms of endurance. So, what kind of training should you do? How can you work around it? We have somewhat discussed this on the podcast before. Um, I can't remember what episode it was. It was quite a while ago, but this was off the back of a conversation I had in the gym with someone the other night who was talking about the desire to be super strong and then also competing in a high rocks and wanting to progress at doing high rocks events and get better at that. So I just said, so what is your actual goal? What is it you actually want to do? Because the best athletes have a clear plan of, right, in this phase of training, I'm going to get stronger. In this phase of training, I'm going to get leaner. In this phase of training, I'm going to build my cardiovascular fitness or other, which is what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, and I think I remember we spoke probably somewhere between 5 to 10 episodes ago. I don't remember specifically what the episode was, but we were talking about like training on season versus training off season. Um, and I mean, I know we've both said it before. You always want to be training strength in some manner, some form. You always want to be working on that. Um, but depending on where you are in the season, your priorities will change. But obviously, you can only do that if you actually do have a set specific goal. So, for example, when you're tapering for an Ironman, yeah, you in an ideal world, you want to be increasing your strength. But the fact of the matter is, you need to be doing time in the pool, you need to be doing time on the bike, you need to be getting miles in, and you've got to be hitting certain numbers. So, are you going to maximize growth? And is your squatting going to increase? Is your deadlift going to increase? Most likely not, because that's just the way it's going to be because you're doing so many miles. And the way it works is that's actually more beneficial to you anyway. I don't want to be this big, chunky 95 kilo brick trying to swim through the pool. I mean, Ross Edgley did, to be fair, but I am not Ross Edgley. Um, and then trying to run a marathon at the end, like that would not help me. So your training will taper based on specifically what it is you are doing specific to that goal. And I think one of the big things that we see nowadays in the fitness industry with functional fitness and competitions like High Rocks and things like that is on, dare I say it, first time out today on social media, you will see guys doing two, sometimes three workouts a day. And, it's that's the way you got to do it. If you've got the time to do it, realistically, that's the way you're going to have to do it. And you're going to have to separate different components out, separate your strength workout from your conditioning work.
Yep, that's the best way to do it. I think we'll cut to the chase. If you want to improve your base levels of fitness and you are working to improve your strength, the best way to do it is in separate sessions. And for me, it doesn't really. I don't think it particularly matters if you were to do a light cardiovascular session in the morning with relatively low joint impact, whether that's something on a bike or in a swimming pool. If you were to do that first thing in the morning and then have 4 hours plus in between sessions where you've had a good meal, you've done a bit of recovery work, you've come back down to ground zero, because it doesn't have to be a massively intense session as a bit of an additional calorie burner, fat burner, whatever you want to call it. Um, Likewise, vice versa. If you were to do your strength training sort of midday and then you wanted to do your CV stuff later on in the evening, again, there's different things that affect it: modality, time, tempo, the intensity of it. There's various ways around it. And even for general population, so like if we go through the interference effect, it can also be known as the concurrent training effect, which refers to the potential conflict that comes with aerobic and strength training, where they both require different pathways to be stimulated to deliver the physiological adaptations that are desired or stimulated by those specific types of training. So you've got the mTOR pathway, which is your strength pathway, and then your AMPK pathway, which is more your aerobic sort of cardiovascular based pathway. And you can still do both at the same time. Concurrent training does work. However, and this is the thing, it depends on what your start point is. If you're coming into the gym for the first time, general PT client, typically quite a good one to use. Not necessarily trained much before. You might structure your session where you do your strength work to begin with, and then we're going to finish off with a bit of a fat burner, a little bit of a circuit, maybe some intervals, even just some steady state or a slow incline walk up a treadmill, something relatively easy or something you can just continue to move through to keep your heart rate up to burn those additional calories. You're still going to make really good progress. Are you going to make as much progress as if you just did strength work for the full hour? You'll get slightly different results. So if you just did strength work every time, all the time, you'll get a lot stronger. You'll probably build a lot more muscle mass than you otherwise would. Um, so it's just understanding where those trade-offs come into play, um, and then the mechanisms behind it. And then, yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you're like, for example, with yourself, the level you're at, you're very, very strong. You're a really good athlete when it comes to speed and maximal power output. Your weakness would arguably be what you're training for right now. Would that be
Yeah.
fair to say? Your long aerobic endurance, not necessarily something you're geared towards as an athlete, whether it's based on muscle fiber type physiology. And ultimately, your rate of force development, which is incredibly good, your ability to recruit big motor units very, very quickly. So normally they're recruited in order of size, theoretically, importance, where you don't want to recruit the biggest units first to lift the lightest. To like, you don't want to recruit 100% of your muscle units to be able to lift a feather or a pen. It's excessive. It's unnecessary. So you recruit the small ones, the little ones that don't come with a massive energy cost. And ultimately, if you were saying, right, what I want to do now with my training is I want to hit a PB in my 100-meter sprint. I want to hit 10.5 seconds for the 100 meters at the same time as going, I'm going to be training for an Ironman. Those two goals are incompatible for the set point that you're at. If you were the kind of client who is running 17 seconds for 100 meters and then still wanting to train for an Ironman, that might be possible. You could arguably, drop 10% body fat, run your 100 meters in 15 seconds and still make progress because you've got a lot of progress, a lot of potential progress to play with. But with where you're at, you're at the level for your strength and speed stuff for, right, if we're going to break through, we need to tap into some of the extra stuff, some of the spicy stuff, some of the things that's going to give you that extra 0.1% because the margins for improvement are far smaller. Whereas with your endurance work, I mean, you've got a lot of potential there.
Yeah, I agree. And even at the minute, there's just so much residual fatigue from each conditioning session. So I have double session days, and I've got obviously some strength work still in. And if I do the strength work first, the running, even if it's active running, is significantly harder. And that, like, strangely enough for me, I'm more likely to injure myself trying to do that run after doing the strength work. So I actually have been told to invert them. So even though it's an active recovery run, I do a steady run first, and then I'll go through the strength stuff later, which obviously means you're going to be somewhat more fatigued.
So, but this always this is a fundamental principle of training. You do the priority first.
Mhm.
So your priority is to get better at running, be more conditioned to running, and then your lifting, your strength work afterwards is going to be inhibited. Doesn't mean it's going to be useless, but will you be able to lift enough to maintain what you've already got? You would be surprised. It takes remarkably little in terms of volume to keep you at a level. Two full body strength sessions per week would be enough for the vast majority of people to at least maintain what they've already got. And this is where I kind of lose my shit with people in season, training in season, the wanting to save their body, the wanting to, ideally you want to continue to make progress through your season towards the end, where the most important games come around, the big moments matter even more, and we're sacrificing preparation earlier on in the year by just reducing and trying to protect ourselves way too much. So yes, your strength training will still have an impact, but it's always best just put your priority first. And this is where I think we can go into the factors that influence this interference effect. So a few things to kind of tap on. Number one would be training intensity and volume. So high volumes of endurance training are more likely to interfere with those strength gains. If you were to go, right, okay, I'm going to do my strength stuff first, or even if I'm going to do my CV stuff first, if that CV stuff is 20 minutes of zone two, or a 5K dog walk, you could still go and lift very heavy afterwards. Likewise, vice versa. If you went and did a heavy strength session and then 20 minutes of zone two on the treadmill, the bike, cross trainer, skier, rowing machine, whatever, no problem, really. I don't think it's going to take much away from you whatsoever. If you were to then go, instead of doing 20 minutes, you're going to go 45 minutes hard, you're going to run into a couple of problems.
Yeah, and I think it's like you said about pathways. Um, you're at the total opposite end of the scale if you're
Yeah.
trying to build maximize power, force output, and force and power output and strength versus doing all this zone two stuff, which I think is what a lot of people are doing nowadays. They heard about zone two, it's come on the scene. Now everyone's thinking, shit, I need to be doing like 3 hours of slow, steady running every 5 days or whatever. It's the total opposite end of what it is that you're actually trying to develop. So it's obviously not going to play um, a significant role in helping it. It's going to impede. You're going to be going one or both ways and get stuck in the middle rather than improving one.
Yeah. Um, we've touched a little bit on this already, but training order. So again, priority comes first.
Yeah.
Whatever your main component is, for the vast majority of my clients, the main thing is speed. So the plyometrics come first. That max effort, body weight, fast movement, high neural demand stuff comes at the start of the session. Then you could move into whatever your secondary goal is, whether it is building a bit more strength or specific movement patterns, and you can look at coaching that. So training order matters. And again, I would personally save that zone two stuff and just tack it onto the end. And think about this as well, like the intensity that you do that. If you go, right, well, I'm going to do 1.5 hours at the end of a session twice a week, and you do, let's say that's 3 hours total, but it makes your training sessions in like way, way longer. If you were to go, right, I'm going to do 30 minutes at the end of each session, 20 to 30 minutes at the end of each session, 5 days a week, you're almost at that same level of volume for way less in terms of the actual cost, and you're going to be sacrificing your strength work far less than you otherwise would if you just did a massive dollop at the end of a training session. So think about spacing out through the week. You don't have to go incredibly hard all the time. You should feel like realistically with training, you should feel most days like you could walk in and go again the next day, especially if you're playing sport. I think I posted a video on Instagram the other week of a guy walking down a muddy path, like slipping and sliding and, being really cautious with his legs and his balance. Like you shouldn't feel like you're walking like that after your training sessions. You want to be able to go again tomorrow, the day after, and then tap into that maximal intensity effort a couple of times through the week.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also a good way of thinking about that is thinking about what specifically you are trying to train. If you're trying to do conditioning and aerobic based work, you you'll get the taste in the back of your tongue. You probably feel sick while you're doing it, but Jesus Christ, you shouldn't feel like your muscles are fucked at the end of it.
No.
You should be able to go again and do something the next day. There'll be some residual fatigue. You'll probably be maybe nervous system's a bit smashed, but you should still be able to train the next day. Whereas if you were doing, I guess, something that's a bit more, let's say, CrossFit and strength-based metabolic conditioning work with a barbell where you're doing, let's say, full squats and stuff, and you're stretching under load and moving fast, then yeah, there's going to be a bit more residual fatigue from that. But that's where those guys train smart in terms of, okay, well, we're going to do different movement patterns today, stuff that's, yeah, you're somewhat interfering. Sorry, you're doing stuff that has already been fatigued, and now you're learning to work through it and push through it. And I think an interesting thing as well, I remember reading, because obviously I did CrossFit before this, some articles about how I know you're not speaking specifically about bodybuilding stuff, but it is kind of on the same lines in terms of building muscle and things. Like we said about pathways, with bodybuilding, what you're actually trying to do is you're trying to, yeah, create mechanical tension, things like that, but you're actually trying to swell the muscles up and swell the blood into the muscle and like fatigue it in that sense so that it's literally blown up as much as possible and you're trying to keep the blood there. Whereas if you were trying to do something conditioning based and fitness based, you want to be clearing that as fast as possible. You don't want it like blowing up. It's this, it's like imagine if you're doing, let's just go with the high rocks, for example. Um, and you get to let's just say wall balls. I think they're the last one. So you'd probably be less impacted right at the end. But let's just say wall balls. You hitting a squat at the bottom position and now your glutes and quads are on fire. That's no use to you. You don't want them blowing up. You don't want the feeling of the muscle like ballooning up while you're trying to do it. You want to be able to clear that through so that you can just carry on moving.
Mm. Yeah. I think that's where, I mean, a lot of this, I think, comes down to bodybuilding in the first place, where, the whole fear is, oh, if I do cardio, it's going to ruin my gains. It's like, well, yeah, if you're going for Mr. Olympia and then you're doing a 45-minute hit workout at the end of your training session, you're not going to get there. Like, there's a reason that CrossFitters aren't competing on the bodybuilding stage. You
Although
know,
I'd argue a lot of them probably could.
yeah, I mean, even though they're shredded, they've not necessarily got that muscle size.
Yeah.
So that's the slight difference, like in terms of building muscle mass. And what I would add with CrossFit is one of the things that drives me a little bit mental is when you see people doing just hard wads day after day after day after day. And I'm like, at the minute, what you're actually doing is just exercising, which is fine. If that's your goal and that's just what you want to do and that's what you enjoy doing, fine. But if you want to actually improve, and this comes down to mitigating the interference effect, it's what are you focusing on? What are you prioritizing in terms of your goals? So just going back, the final aspect of one of the factors that influences the interference effect is the recovery periods that you give in between. So insufficient rest in between modalities. So like if you think about those two pathways that we spoke about, your mTOR and your AMPK, if you were to go, right, I've got a bunch of resources, I'm going to push everything into the mTOR pathway, focus on muscle gains and strength gains, you'll maximize those results. You then have to recover, replenish, and build up an abundance of resources again before you can then commit to either another pathway or the same one again. And essentially, that's your recovery in a nutshell. Like, otherwise, you're just going to be fighting a battle with depleted resources, continuously trying to return to some level of homeostasis. That's why you don't train 9 hours a day every single day of the year. Like you need recovery days, you need rest days in between, you need time in between sessions, even if you're doing two a days, and then you need to be clever about the way that you structure those two a days. Um, so give yourself a like if you are considering this, start small. If you want to go for a 10-minute run in the morning or a 20-minute run in the morning, come back, go to work, do whatever it is you want to do, and then go to the gym in the evening, do that. If you want to go to the gym, if you've only got time to do one, go to the gym in the evening, finish it with a gentle, we say zone two, relatively low heart rate, continuous burner just to keep everything moving and burn off a few extra calories. That's about as good as you're going to get. If you can't split it into two sessions, do that, but don't hammer yourself in that second phase of the workout. Pick a priority. So this leads us on to our next kind of talking point for this, which is mitigating the interference effect and reducing the uh, say reducing the harmful effects. So number one would be prioritize your goals. Number two, strategize your training order in accordance with your priorities. Again, if you want to get a bigger deadlift, probably do that first. If you want to get faster at running, probably do that first. If you want to be able to run further or kayak and paddle better, do that before you do your gym session. If you're training for sport, and I suppose this is where one of the things that I think sports teams sometimes struggle with, because I know how difficult it is in those environments, but time on the pitch, time playing, time, for coaches and the actual sport specific stuff. versus the importance. It's that battle of that and the importance of doing the strength and speed work. And which order should you do? Your gym session and your on-field session. I would argue it depends on the nature of the field session. And this is where the communication between the coaches has to be tight. It needs to be on point. So, like, I think when I worked at Bury, for example, we didn't have the luxury of having our own facility, gym facility, or anything like that. But what we did do was, I'm forever grateful to Andy Welsh for this. But he basically gave me the first chunk of the session and was like, "Do what you want." I was like, "Easy. We're going to run fast." We did loads of sprint work at the start of the session. Once, sometimes twice a week. Sometimes we took different players out, but we got them working at maximal speeds with plenty of recovery time. And I think we were quite lucky in terms of, I don't think we had many hamstring injuries. I don't think anyone pulled anything in a game that I can remember. I might be being biased. I might just have, I might need Kate's psychological assistance with this. Um, I don't know whether I've got a bit of a blind spot, but to my knowledge, in my memory, I don't think there's anything that stands out as like, fuck, someone got fucked up there, and it worked really, really well. So it's a case of do your priority first, and I think I know my netball teams that come in and see me. I think they have their court sessions first, and then they come into the gym afterwards because their priority isn't to get better at squatting. It's not to get bigger. It's not to get more muscular. It's just to assist and provide a little bit more adaptation on top of their things that they're doing on court. So again, if you can't separate them, just think about the order that it's going in and prioritize that. We've mentioned allow adequate recovery in between. Um, and again, with the netball girls, I've got some coming in tonight. They're going to be seeing me. They're going to be coming straight from their actual training session into the gym. It's a case of thinking about the rest times that they're going to have between exercises and not overfacing them with volume to the point where they're just knackered and getting beaten up. That's not the purpose of it. And then periodizing your training. Holy shit, who would have thought periodizing your training program and having a priority over a prolonged period of time would yield useful results?
Yeah, I always in fact, because of you, since thinking about obviously when you were working with Berry, what was the club before that? You worked for a footy club before that.
Did I?
Yeah,
I don't remember. I worked with a few junior teams and a couple of other little. I think Berry was the main one though.
I could be on with T. But either way, it always makes me think of like in terms of periodization, professional clubs in any sport, and in fact, even semi-professional and amateur clubs in any sport, you've got a season, you've got an off season, and your priorities are very different during your season, during your off season. Think about your pre-season as well. Pre-season, you're always
Mm,
hammering you with conditioning. It's not pre-season, okay, we're just going to batter everyone. It's, I mean, yeah, you do get battered, but the idea is to get you fit enough to be able to like withstand the demands of the season. And in fact, that brings me to the point of, do you recall when I was at Northwich Victoria?
mm,
Again, this is your priorities. I rocked up and we had a pre-season conditioning session that was preceded by a bee sting because they just fancied beasting us because it was pre-season. And I think maybe four of us, five of us got hamstring injuries. We were doing sprints around a track before doing sprints on a pitch in the session. So it was like a session into a session of just sprinting. It was ridiculous. But that's kind of the same thing as people that are going in and just doing these red line workouts where they think I need to just smash myself with this workout. If you're trying to smash yourself with a workout, your goal there, your priority is smashing yourself with a workout. Like that's what you're there doing. If you're there to develop a certain metabolic pathway or something like that, it's very different. You need to be a lot smarter and you need a proper coach helping you with specifically whatever it is that you're trying to do there. Remember, you're looking for a specific stimulus. And when you're in season, it's very different to what you're doing off season. And again, obviously, Alex, I know you train a lot of like athletes. For those of you that are listening, if you don't currently have one structured, your off seasons where you can get ahead of everyone else by working on certain components of strength and speed and things like that. Because your on season is where you're just looking to maintain them. Like we were talking about me tapering for my Ironman, I'm not getting stronger now. Um, my lifts are
But you're not necessarily losing strength.
no, and I'm not necessarily getting smaller either. I'm not
And
necessarily losing lean mass. I will track these things. I have been, and I've not lost anything yet. But other than fat, which is good, but I'll track again as we get closer and the volume goes up and up and up. I've not lost strength. I've not had to go down on exercises, and that's the whole point. You want to be at the position where you are as strong as you can be to then withstand the effect of the load on the joints during the actual event. It helps me to be stronger doing the Ironman than being weaker doing the Ironman. And
yeah,
that goes for everything, obviously.
yeah, yeah. I think, and this is the important thing, like we don't want to scare anyone out of doing any sort of cardio. In fact, actually, the purpose of this episode is to do the opposite, is to encourage you to get involved in those good behaviors and just dial in some sort of focus on your training so that you've got a specific purpose and you're working towards a specific outcome, because that is even more important the more advanced you are. If you're a relative newbie and you've got loads of potential gains on the table, it's basically playtime. You could more or less do anything and it would have an effect. It would have a positive impact. So, just in terms of kind of, I suppose, a final summary, if you are going to do it, try and separate the sessions. If you can't separate the sessions, don't make your CV work really high intensity. Don't make it incredibly hard. Do it to a level where you can maintain it and you could do it again the next day. You don't need to be blowing out your backside and suffering for 45 minutes plus. 30 minutes tops will do. 30 minutes at a relatively steady state where you can breathe easy, potentially have a conversation, relatively low joint stress and low impact. If you're not a runner, don't try and run whilst doing this. Just walk, either walk on a treadmill, jump, hop on a bike, um, do things that aren't going to break you down too much. Um, this is actually a good one as well. Actually, this is a really good idea. Um, like try and have some sort of recovery drink whilst you're doing it, whether it's your protein shake or an isotonic sports drink. Have something that's going to kind of replenish you and keep you going a little bit. You've just been sipping on a Lucozade Sport. Beautiful advertisement there for them. Um, so like include that kind of thing into it as well. Start thinking through that process, right? What's my refueling going to look like? And what's my recovery going to look like? And then the final note, I guess, and this is probably the most important thing, nothing is going to make you lose gains. Nothing's going to make you lose gains. If you're doing something, you're not going to lose. You're just not going to gain as much.
I also think people, we always, it gets dramatized, obviously, because that's what sells, etc. But people think the same as like, when people make fun of women putting on loads of muscle too fast,
Yeah.
no matter what stimulus you send, you're not going to adapt over the course of 3 to 5 days. Like it just doesn't happen overnight. So what you would notice is if you were doing junk volume and overtraining and you were doing, let's say, too much conditioning to get strong, like we've alluded to, you would notice when you do your, let's just say, back squats, you're really struggling. Like your legs aren't able to push the weight, or you're not hitting the same number, or you struggle to hit the same number, or you're not hitting all the reps. Like that would happen in one session. And then if you notice it again in the next, then you can take a look and go, okay, am I not sleeping well the night before? Am I not eating well the night before? Am I not eating well on the morning of? What's going on here? And then that can be addressed immediately. Do what you can to fuel specifically for that workout
Yep.
to get the most out of it. It will not happen over the course of 1 week or 2 weeks. And like Alex said, two full body strength workouts per week without killing yourself is sufficient.
Yep. To at the very least hold on to what you've already got, and you might surprise yourself. So anyway, hopefully that's been really useful. Hopefully that's not resulting in a ton more questions. Hopefully it's given you a few answers and a little bit of guidance and maybe a few things to think about with regards to your own training and where you want to focus your priorities. If you need any help with that, we are here to do that. We can do online programming, we can do in-person coaching. We are very accessible. You can reach out to us on Instagram. Alex underscore Alex underscore Lenkowski underscore performance. I nearly said Alex underscore 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 or Chris underscore Lenkowski underscore performance. You will find us there. We're very easy to find because our last name is pretty unique, to be honest, isn't it? Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us through that. And if you would like to leave us a review, leave us your thoughts on the podcast, please do so and share it with anyone else who you feel like needs to hear this message as well. And finally, if you do need to get yourself geared up with some warm weather clobber for your training, head over to dryrobe.com and get yourself suited, get yourself booted out, ready to go. And remember, there is no such thing as bad weather, just poor clothing choices. So, you like that one, don't you? Anyway, until next time, that is it from me, Chris.
Yes, peace, love, and protein, everyone. Look after yourselves. Stay away from high rocks.
Take care, guys. Oh, wow.